everyone, and thank you for attending today's workshop on tips for virtual interviews. I am the facilitator, Danielle Perez. I am one of the operations supervisors. Today's workshops comes to you by America's Job Center of California with Santa Barbara County Workforce Development Board Career Services. Today, we will be discussing tips for virtual interviews. Here is an overview of what we will be discussing. Our first topic will be what is a virtual interview. Secondly, we will be discussing how to be tech ready. We will then talk about setting the scene, followed by steps to prepare for your interview, what to do during the interview, and what's next. To begin, we're going to talk about what a virtual interview is. Any interview is just a conversation between the interviewer or the employer and the interviewee, also known as the job seeker. A virtual interview is an interview that's conducted using some type of technology. Oftentimes this may be a phone call or a video chat or video interview. The interview may be taken place via Zoom, WebEx, or Skype. An interview is just a formality to get the job after applying and an opportunity to build rapport with the interviewer. So this is really a great time to showcase your qualifications and how you can really benefit the company based on your knowledge and your skill set. This is really just a great way to understand the company better, understand the employer and what they're looking for from an employee, and to really see if it's a good fit for both you and the employer. We're now going to talk about the technology needed during a virtual interview. So some of the tools and devices that you may need for a virtual interview include a mobile device, a laptop, or computer. Again, some of the virtual resources that may be free to you include Zoom, Skype, and WebEx. When you're preparing for an interview, you really want to be able to test these tools in advance to really make sure that you're comfortable with all of the technologies, that you understand all of the resources available to you, and identify ways that you can really make the resource work for you during an interview. So for example, you want to do a trial run of the virtual interview. You want to have tested the audio, the visual, and other such things to ensure that you are comfortable with the technology and there is no potential trouble during the interview with these resources. Next, we're going to discuss setting the scene. So during any interview, it's really important that you're presenting yourself in a natural environment. And especially during a virtual interview, it's important that you're really finding a space with minimal distractions. We know that in today's environment, we are finding that more people are interviewing from home, a home office, and it's really important that we are setting a clean, simple backdrop with natural colors. So this might be done by simply putting a sheet behind you, clearing the walls of any distracting pictures. Maybe you find a quiet space in the corner of the house that you feel comfortable in. What is really great about Zoom is they allow for backdrops that you may choose. And each backdrop is something that you're going to want to go through and make sure that it's appropriate for the settings of the virtual interview. Next, you're going to want to ensure that your lighting is appropriate and that it is a natural, hopefully natural lighting. We suggest sitting in a room that allows for natural lighting, and if that is not possible, we suggest having a room that is very well lit to where the employer is able to see your face and see your body. And lastly, we want to apologize for any potential distractions. Now, preparing for the interview, it's important that we discuss your research of the company. Ways that we can research the company to get a better understanding is through understanding its line of business, what type of products are they producing, what type of population are they serving. Another topic that you might want to research is the company's culture. Again, this is going to include the type of population or customers that they are serving, and the environment and the cohesiveness of the team, of the employer or the company. Another topic that you might be able to research is the company's mission and history. This will help you gain a better understanding as to why the company started and what their missions and their goals really are by providing the services or the products to their customers. You may also want to research the company's competitors. This will help you to better understand some of the goals that the employers are looking to obtain. And lastly, the funding sources. So this is important to understand whether this is a lasting position that is fully funded through a for-profit or a nonprofit, this is or a private agency, or if this is something that is based on a grant and it has limited funding. These are all things that are going to be important to understand on how the company or the business is functioning and what its goals are and what its missions are. In addition to preparing for the interview, you may want to review the job description and any other job postings. When doing this, you may be able to identify your talking points. You might be able to, for example, you might be able to highlight certain technologies that you've used, certain populations that you've served, certain customer service techniques that you've been able to apply in your past positions. You'll also be able to recognize any weaknesses and any strengths. So this is important. A lot of times employers will ask, based on the job description, do you have any concerns about the position or about the company or the product? And this is a really great time to recognize that and discuss that openly and honestly, and also be able to turn those weaknesses that you may have into strengths. When reviewing the job description, it's really great time to generate questions that you might have about the position, about the task, about the company, about some of its customers. And this is also a really great way to prepare for your closing questions at the end of the interview. And it's also, again, a great time to highlight your qualifications and your experience. In preparation for your virtual interview, this is a great time to prepare your elevator speech. An elevator speech is a speech that you want to prepare that's only about 30 seconds long and is very short and sweet. It's very brief and concise. An elevator speech, if you can imagine, is entering an elevator, potentially for an interview, stepping onto the elevator and having a very brief conversation with somebody else that's on the elevator. And they say, hi, are you here for the interview? Tell me about yourself. And that's often how you're able to present an elevator speech is by somebody asking, so tell me about yourself. So when you hear that question or something similar, this is a great time to use your elevator speech. Again, it's only about 30 seconds long, and it really needs to be brief. You want to share your skills. You want to mention your goals. What are your educational or your career goals? And when you're telling this to the employer, you really have to to understand that during this time, they're asking, what's in it for me? How are you going to benefit my company? How are you going to fulfill the needs that we have for this position? And so that's really what you want to keep in mind when developing this elevator speech. You also want to avoid any language or jargon. So language specific to a program or a line of business, you really want to stray away from, and really just make it common words, common language that's to be able to be understood by just the general public. You also want to be able to practice this, but don't memorize it. So you really want this to feel natural. You want to be able to highlight your skills and your experience, but you don't want it to sound like it's been too formalized, like it's been memorized. So for example, my elevator speech, or one of them would be, "Hi, my name's Danielle Perez. I work for ResCare Workforce Services. We're in the line of helping people get trained and back to work. I have a lot of experience doing this because I worked 7 years within government contracts and subcontracts to really provide these services and great customer service." And that would be it. That would be my elevator speech. And it was not very long. And of course, you might want to go into more details. That was, again, just a very brief example. And so again, during your elevator speech and just throughout the interview, you want to be cautious of your verbal and nonverbal language. So as many of you may have heard, it's not what you say, but it's how you say it. So as you see here, the graph shows what we are actually hearing and seeing when you are saying and what you're not saying during an interview. So only about 7% of what you're saying is being taken in, while the rest of it is your body language at 55%, and the tone and the way that you're saying it is about 38%. And so that's really important to remember, again, during any interview, whether it be virtual or face-to-face. It's how you're saying these. You want to be cautious of your tone of voice, the way that you're saying things, your body language. You don't want to talk too much with your hands. You really want to just be relaxed and be natural. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that here. So as we mentioned, language is extremely important. And so again, we have verbal language, and verbal language is the actual words that are said, what is actually being said. And so when you're talking to somebody, you really want to be an active listener. You want to hear what they're saying and to start to formulate, some type of response or question. And you really want to use an appropriate pitch and volume. Again, you want to be responsive to the question or to the general statement. And you want to be very clear and concise. You really don't want any complex thoughts. This may, lead the employer to thinking that there are tangent thoughts, that there is, it was kind of a roundabout answer or whatever it may be. You really want to avoid that, and you want to be clean and concise in your responses. And you want to be honest. There's times that we feel that being honest or too honest in an interview might be detrimental, but it's better to be honest and talk about those weaknesses and how you want to work on them, rather than getting a job and you're unable to fulfill the task and the duties that are required of you. And if you're feeling confident and you're feeling comfortable throughout the interview, you can use humor if appropriate. You really just want to understand that at this time, during, again, any interview, you are really developing a rapport. And so sometimes that can come in the form of humor, and other times it's just inappropriate. So it's really just gauging the situation. But again, if you feel confident and comfortable in the interview, you can use humor. And of course, it has to be appropriate. So we are now going to talk about the nonverbal language. So nonverbal language, again, is the body language. So you want to be natural. Again, this is the hand movements, the facial expressions. So you want to be natural in your movements. You don't want to be over animated, so you're talking too much with your hands. or too much facial expression. You really want to be interested. And so that's, leaning into computer, it's having a positive posture, things of that nature. You really want to make sure that you're maintaining eye contact. This, especially during a virtual interview, it can be easy to be distracted. And so it's something that we really want to make sure that we are looking at the interviewer. If it's a panel of interviewers, you want to make sure that you're scanning the computer. You're looking at each one, responding to the individual that asked the question, and kind of going back and forth. But it's really important that we're not looking down, that we're not looking above or around our computers or mobile device. This will really let the employer know that you are paying attention, that you are being respectful, and that you are really motivated to obtain this position. And again, you just want to be relaxed. This should be natural. It's just a conversation between you and the employer about your experiences and your qualifications, and to see if it's a good fit. So, you want to be relaxed. A great way of showing nonverbal cues is smiling and nodding at appropriate times. So again, language is important. It's not what we say, but it's how we say it. So we'll go ahead and move along. In preparation for any interview, you want to be prepared for questions. This here is the STAR method, which represents the situation, the task, action, and results. So this is a great way to structure your responses. So for example, the situation, you want to, if they say, can you tell me about a time when you had a conflict at work, how did you handle that? So you want to start off with the situation, explain what the situation was. So this could be, we had a customer that was dissatisfied with his customer service and wanted to obtain services for free. The task, so you're going to talk about what your role was what was the objective in this situation. And so the task may have been, we wanted to provide customer service and have the customer leave happy and satisfied with our services and our product. And the action is what you did to achieve that objective. So what did you do in that situation? For this example, it could have been, I spoke to my general manager, and we were able to discuss this situation with the customer, and we resolved it by offering 10% off. And then you would then go on to talk about the results. And so that's what the final result is of the entire situation. And so in this case, it would have been, the individual was satisfied that he received 10% off, and he reported being happy and thankful for that, and for us understanding his complaints and bringing them to the manager. And overall, the situation was resolved. So that is an example of the STAR method. Again, it's the way to structure your responses to questions. And here is a list of types of questions that you may encounter during an interview. So the first is the skills-based questions. So these are the types of questions that employers are asking to discuss your directly related experience. If you have any experience or skills in using tools, technologies, or industry standards, or knowledge of industry standards. And this is a way for them to determine your theoretical and practical knowledge. So your theoretical knowledge is more of a book base. It's, you understand these tools and technologies, while your practical knowledge is actually having used them. So a skills-based question might be, please tell me a time when you used this specific technology in your past experience. So that would be a skills-based question. The second type of question is behavioral. So behavioral type questions are really a way for the employers to identify your aptitude, your attitude, your approach, motivation, your loyalty, your work ethic, and your management style. So an example of behavioral question might be, please tell me a time when and a coworker asked you for confidential information that they should not have asked for about a customer. And so they're really looking just to see kind of, where your loyalties lie, what is your work ethic like, would you follow policies and procedures, those types of questions. Whereas situational, which is the third type of question, really looks to identify, the hypothetical situations or circumstances that you might encounter and your possible reactions to those situations or scenarios, what your natural instincts are, how confident you are in your decision making. So a situational question might be something along the lines of, please describe how you might provide customer service to an individual that has explained that he is dissatisfied with your products and your company, and so then that's a way for you to highlight some of your, the way that you would naturally react and your instincts and confidence in decision making. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the actual interview. And again, this is specific to virtual interviews, but this is also applicable to all interviews. So you want to be very personable. You really want to show the positive qualities that you have and that you're going to bring to their company. You want to dress professionally. We know that these are virtual interviews, and sometimes, it can be confusing on what type of position, what type of dress they're looking for, but we suggest always wearing professional dress. For those that are comfortable wearing a collared shirt and tie, it might be a nice blouse, making sure that your hair is neat, and just be really presenting yourself as a professional. You want to be timely to any interview. For virtual interviews, we suggest that you arrive 5 to 10 minutes early. In virtual interviews in Zoom and WebEx and Skype, there is a way to notify the employer or the company that you are on the call, and that way alarms them that you are early, you're punctual, and it's really just a great way to highlight that you are eager for the interview and that you're likely to show up on time in future events and hopefully future times to start your position. And you want to have a positive mindset. So during the interview, you want to really be interactive and engaged. So again, this is, nodding yes or no during the interview. You really want to be just having the conversation and being present in the conversation. So that includes, answering all questions. If you're uncertain about a question, we suggest that you ask them to repeat the question or to rephrase the question. But you want to always do the best of your ability to answer the questions. And when answering questions, again, there are the three types of questions. These are ways to maintain a structured response. Is the STAR method, the situational, task, action, and result. So you really want to be structured in your responses to their questions. And while you're having this conversation, of course, it is natural to talk with your hands, but we want you just to be very aware that sometimes during an interview that can come off as maybe aggressive or too animated. And so it's something that you just want to be aware of. A tip that I always suggest is, putting your hands on your lap or maybe playing with a pen underneath the desk or computer if it's out of computer sight. Those are some tips that might help you to really just maintain minimal hand gestures and body language. Again, you want to be active listening. So this is, making sure that you're actually listening to what the individual is saying. A good way to show that you are active listening is to repeat back what the individual said. So for example, this might be, the conversation might say something like, we're really looking for somebody that has great customer service, that has over 20 years experience and is looking to stay with the company long term. And as an active listener, you're going to repeat that back to them and say, as an individual with over 20 years of experience in customer service, I'm really looking to dedicate my career to this company. So that's a really great way to show that you are actively listening. Okay, and you want to avoid fillers. Fillers are a way for our brain to just kind of catch up with our thoughts, a way to prolong, our time needed to present an answer. So fillers often come in the form of and so we really want to try to avoid all of those. And again, but we do want to be natural, so don't worry too much about it. If you do find yourself saying and a little bit too much, just stop. It's better to stop and think and let your mind fully process the question and your answer before responding. During any interview, again, you want to make sure that you're maintaining eye contact. We don't want to have the individuals believing that we're distracted because we're looking up, down, around our computers or our mobile devices. So again, make sure that you're looking at the interviewer or the panel of interviewers. Don't be looking at yourself in the computer screen or distracted in texting, whatever it may be. You just really want to make sure that your focus is on the screen. Okay, and during the interview, it's really important that you're asking questions. This is a really great time to understand that you are also looking to make sure that this company and these employees are the best fit for you. Okay, so hopefully the interview went well and we want to follow up. So the next step is to send some type of follow-up, whether that be email or, the gold standard is really a thank you note or thank you card. So you really want to follow up within the first 24 to 48 hours of the interview. So this can be in the form, again, of an email. It can just say something very brief as, thank you for your time and consideration for the position of customer service representative. I really enjoyed discussing the qualifications and the positions with you. I hope to hear back from you soon. Thank you so much. Something along those lines. And again, that would also be something that you can do in the form of a handwritten thank you note or card. And you want to only really follow up once unless otherwise instructed. Okay, and during the follow-up phase, we believe that it's a really good time for you to really evaluate your own performance and how you interacted during the interview. You want to take a step back and say, did I answer all of the questions? Were all of my answers structured? Did I use the STAR method? Was I maintaining eye contact? Was I over animated or a little bit too aggressive in my nonverbals? All of those things you want to consider. And I also suggest, I personally like to write down all of the questions that I remember from the interview. And that's just a practice that I have. So that way it prepares me for similar interviews with companies in the similar industry or occupation. And so it's a great way for me to remind myself of questions that might come up in the future. Okay. And so these are some frequently asked questions and answers. So the first question is, what programs do I have to download for a virtual interview? So the free programs that may be downloaded on your computer or mobile device are Zoom, WebEx, and Skype. The second question is, should I ask questions during and after the interview? It's always recommended that you ask questions during the interview and at the end of the interview. We want you to remember that this is really a good time to make sure that this company and these employees are a good fit for you. And the third question is, where can I find practice interview questions? So we suggest using Google or Bing and just simply typing in interview questions. And you can even more so narrow this down and find more specific questions for the industry or the occupation. For example, you could type in customer service interview questions, or government interview questions, or computer science interview questions, things like that. And I also want to note here that I also suggest Googling an evaluation sheet for your follow-up phase. Okay, and the fourth question is, should I bring a copy of my cover letter or resume? Yes, we suggest that you bring both a copy of your cover letter and your resume, even though this is a virtual interview. So, this doesn't have to be a hard copy. It can be on your laptop or your computer, your mobile device, somewhere that you have access to it. Make sure it's the correct cover letter and resume that you submitted, because you really should be submitting a resume that's specific to that position. So make sure it's the correct resume and cover letter. And we suggest that you do this because this is a really great way to answer any clarifying questions that they might have about your resume. If you were laid off, or if you had a lapse of experience, or lapse of employment, if they have a question about your GPA at a school or university that you attended, or specific classes, whatever it may be. It's really great just to have those documents in front of you and be able to see what the interviewer is referencing. So we're hoping with all of these tips that you have success in your job interview. We want to say thank you for your time. We really appreciate you attending here. We're going to be having future workshops, and we hope to see you there.